Oh, hey everyone. Well, welcome back to Down Periscope, Up Periscope. I'm your host, Tim, again. And boy, let me just say, I found another roomy place on the submarine to sleep. We are actually in the forwardmost watertight compartment of the boat, the torpedo room. And I'm on the very top skid of the torpedoes. So, starboard side, to my left, to my right, your left, is forward. There will be 6 torpedo tubes up there, plus the escape trunk and other things. As you can see, I still don't have quite a lot of headroom in here because the motor for the anchor capstan is directly above me. So this will hurt even more if I wake up suddenly and decide to smash my face into it. But anyway. So, yes, let's talk about it. My previous video on berthing on a submarine really took off. It just exploded. Lots and lots of views, like tens of thousands of views and lots of subscribers. And of course, some people left comments saying like, well, I didn't even get a berth. You know, I got to sleep in the torpedo room. So yes, I neglected to mention that we would set up some sleeping spots in here, assuming that there was space and you could get put in here. So this is sort of an addendum to that video. So yeah, I mean, for one thing, this is overflow, essentially. If we have space, we will set up bunks in here. As I said, I'm on the very top skid, where torpedoes are stored. The racks are known as skids. And I've heard these colloquially referred to as skid racks. That is, sleeping spaces in a torpedo room. Directly over my head is actually the pressure hull. It's about 1.5 inches of HY80 steel. So that's what's going to keep the water from squishing the boat. Indeed, if you were to dive down this submarine and tie a string from one side of the bulkhead to the other side, when you go back to surface, because the hull is compressed by the water pressure, it's going to expand a bit, that string will snap. Yeah. Or you see a similar thing in that movie, Down Periscope, where, you know, he's like, oh, watch this string, the water's going to squeeze the hull of this boat like an empty beer can. Yeah, so same thing. But anyway, so yes, you could very well be sleeping in here. Now, bear in mind that I'm not a submariner, if you couldn't tell. I'm not an engineer or anything like that. But I've heard from submariners who are tour guides on this boat, they say that the torpedo room, occasionally called the bridal suite, is actually one of the nicer places, quote unquote, to sleep on the boat. For one thing, this will be the most heavily air-conditioned space on board because of the explosives in here. Therefore, it's much cooler in here. There's a bit more room to stretch out. And of course, the torpedoes do not snore. Now, to people who have no knowledge of really what life on a submarine is like, or, you know, this could seem like completely asinine, like, why on earth would you want to sleep next to a high explosive weapon, you know? And to give you some perspective, well, like a Mark 48 torpedo has 650 pounds of explosives in it, plus any unused fuel, right? You might be sleeping next to a Mark 45 torpedo. That's the only nuclear torpedo the United States ever fielded. That's got an 11 kiloton nuclear warhead in the front of it. So yeah, I mean, why would you want to do that, right? You can sleep next to these things, on top of them, right? Maybe another tour guide said he was sleeping on top of a subrock, which is essentially a submarine rocket with a nuclear depth charge on it. Before the days of vertical launch tubes, right, they would store like Tomahawk cruise missiles or Harpoon anti-ship missiles in the torpedo room. So you might be sleeping next to one of those as well. But yeah, to the average person, like, oh man, my God, that's crazy. Why would you want to do that? Well, here's the thing, like these torpedoes are not like ticking time bombs. They're not just going to spontaneously explode, okay, if you're in here. Well, that said, I mean, unless we're aboard like the Kursk in the early 2000s or possibly USS Scorpion in 1968. In terms of the Kursk, one of her torpedoes, which had hydrogen peroxide in it, it's just, you know, got heated and exploded, you know, and that's probably what sunk that submarine. One of the theories about what sank the Scorpion was that the batteries on her Mark 37 torpedoes, which we do have one in here, those were known to get hot. And they might just combust. The battery itself might explode and cause a low order detonation inside the torpedo room. But again, that's one of many theories about what happened to Scorpion. But anyway, I'm not here to talk about torpedoes. My point is that they're not just going to spontaneously explode. The only heavyweight torpedoes that submarines, U.S. submarines today carry is Mark 48s, and they're not just going to decide, oh, I'm going to explode right now. So, indeed, there are many stories out there of submariners in the Navy who is like, oh, I didn't even get a sleeping berth. You know, I slept in the torpedo room on top of a Mark 14 or this, that, or the other weapon. So yeah, it happens. That's just the way it is. Now, that being said, from my understanding, much of the Blueback's operations are still technically classified. We do believe that she did some operations or exercises perhaps with Navy SEALs. And in '79, I think, she did some operations with Army Special Forces, or an exercise, I should say, with Army Special Forces, Green Berets. So we might also be carrying those guys in here as well. So this submarine can deploy them into the field. And this is before, this is before the days of the Virginia-class submarines or, you know, SEAL delivery vehicles, those little submersibles and all that. So instead of having like a lockout chamber for the Navy SEALs or, you know, or a SEAL delivery vehicle and a dry dock shelter and STV and all that on the deck of the submarine, they would essentially be in here. They're going to get their scuba gear on, they climb up the ladder into the escape trunk, and they go ashore via that way. I think technically they could swim out of the torpedo tubes, but I don't think you would be firing any Navy SEALs out of those torpedo tubes. Probably because you would not survive a 3,000-pound slug of water hitting you, but yeah, as much as they may have wanted to try. I mean, I know James Bond does that in a couple movies, like You Only Live Twice and The World Is Not Enough, but I mean, you're not going to go out a torpedo tube. You know, the only reason you're going to go inside a torpedo tube is to clean it. But yeah, so we might have some special ops guys in here as well. And not only that, I think I forgot to mention in the previous video on berthing, what if you're taller than 6'2"? Well, you just curl up your legs, right? And even then, you know, regardless of whether you're shorter or taller than 6'2", you're still probably going to share your rack with food. Yes, there's going to be like food and cans stuffed at the foot of your rack. Even in the torpedo room, because it is the most heavily air conditioned, there's going to be food. Fresh produce, eggs, cheese, potatoes, things like that. And when the submarine is underwater, it'll probably be about 10 or 15 degrees colder, give or take. So yeah, it makes a good refrigerator in here essentially. So you're going to be sharing this space with food as well. We're going to pack food everywhere on a submarine. Every single nook and cranny and horizontal space. If there's a space and we can fit like a sack of potatoes or whatever there, they'll put it there. So you might be sharing your rack up here with some food as well. Now some people have asked like, well, if there's beds up here, how do you get up here? You climb. Simple as that. Yep. Now this is not the only place you would have a skid rack though. There are other places, and I'll throw some other footage in here as well. But this is where we got them. All right, so that's a little addendum to the previous video, but this time we've got people sleeping in the torpedo room. As to whether or not they would hot rack in here, I'm not entirely sure, but again, I've been told that this is technically one of the more desirable places on a submarine to sleep. The bridal suite, as it were. So anyway, take care folks, I'll see you later.